What is the importance of of the science in education now?
Well, the importance of science in education is the following. Namely, we need more science for the future. And you may say, why? It turns out that all the technologies that we enjoy today came from basic research in science. If there weren't basic research in science, you wouldn't have your telephone, you wouldn't have your automobile, you wouldn't have anything. We basically would be living in the caves. You know, take something as fundamental as electricity. When Faraday was doing his experiments in his laboratory, they had no idea of how electricity would be used. And he was asked, you know, I think some minister, the story goes, some minister came to him and asked, Mr. Faraday, what good is your experiments, what good is electricity to human beings? And he said, I haven't the vaguest idea, but I know someday you'll be taxing us on it. So, you know, that's sort of a funny story, but it points out to the fact that when science is being developed, we have no idea very often of what the implications for the future will be and how important it will be. And for example, I consider the transistor the most important invention of the 20th century, because without the transistor, we wouldn't have the microchip, and everything we do and use to some extent is related to the use of the digital world and the microchip. Science is very important, and if we don't train young scientists for the future, all we'll be doing is perfecting the technologies we have. We will not develop the technologies of the future.
How can we make the science more simple or easy to teach? Because when I was a kid, there was the atom with electron, proton, and neutron, and that was all. Now it's really complicated. There are the quarks, 6 types of quarks, and other particles, the boson.
You see, the point about teaching science is that you don't have to give all the details. If I were teaching young people about quarks, I wouldn't get involved in all the 6 quarks. I would talk about the quarks they're made of. You know, you're made of up quarks and down quarks and electrons. And I would talk about that and what are the properties of them, and you know, what are the implications of it. You know, sometimes in education, you can say too much. Sometimes less is more in education. The main thing is to get concepts across, and don't stress every detail that has to be stressed. The idea is to give a conceptual understanding of the world we live in to young kids. They don't have to know all the mathematics. They don't have to know all the details. But they should know that when they use their cell phone, it's not magic, it's science. When they get older, if they pursue science, they can learn all the details of how you formulate it mathematically and so on and so forth. But the main thing is to get them to understand the conceptual basis of the world around us.
What do you think, you say the word magic, what do you think about the magic thoughts and also about the people that are using the word quantum out of context, like a quantum leap of faith or something like that?
Well, you know, like a language develops on its own, and a quantum leap of faith, you know, because quantum mechanics is so mysterious sometimes to people. You know, you can't prevent people from misusing languages, and so you just have to accept it and make sure that when they're talking about scientific things, they use the proper language.
Also, in some countries there are kind of war between religion and science. can they coexist? You don't. You
Well,
can,
you know, look, religion and science have two different bases. You know, religion comes from revelation. People basically get thoughts that come from above. Science comes from observation. So those two have different inputs. There's nothing wrong if people decide they want to try to understand the universe, whatever it is, through revelation, providing they don't contradict scientific facts, and providing they don't tell other people how they should live their lives. In other words, if somebody wants to be religious and have a religious framework for his or her view of external reality, that's fine. You know, that's a personal decision, as long as that person doesn't say, well, I know the truth for everybody.
Can you explain a little bit of the quarks and the weight of the person? I heard you talk about.
Well, actually, the whole idea here is that you're made up of three things in different combinations: electrons, up quarks, and down quarks. These are extremely tiny things, and they have very little weight. So if you're a person who is, let's say 150 pounds, less than 2 pounds of your weight come from the quarks and electrons. And so you say, where's the other weight come from? Well, it comes from the most famous equation in physics, E equals mc squared. And the energy that is, the quarks move around very fast, so they have kinetic energy, and that kinetic energy has weight. And the force fields holding the quarks together have energy embedded in them, and therefore they also give weight. And so over 148 pounds of your weight come from those two sources. So basically, your volume doesn't come from quarks and electrons, and your weight doesn't come from quarks and electrons. So you might say, where does your volume come from? It comes from the electric fields that hold the electrons in place.
Okay. You were inspired in a book written by Einstein to study physics, and you reject a scholarship in art.
Yeah, correct.
Why, do you keep doing some art?
Oh yes, I love art. I mean, I've never lost my love for art, and you know, whenever I can paint, I paint. You know, to be a real artist, you have to paint all the time, and so I'm a reasonable amateur artist, and I enjoy it. To me, it's a wonderful pastime, and I love seeing great art. And incidentally, I love Mexican art very much, so I've gotten much enjoyment in my life from art, and I also, of course, I love music and I love good literature, and I think it's important for anybody who wants to go into science and engineering also to have a great love of the arts and the humanities, because I think without that you have a much narrower life. And I think art helps. I always think that art helps me a little bit with creativity. Because when you watch it, when you think about artists at work, you think about people who really are willing to try new things and different things in ways that have never been tried before. And that's what you should do in science and engineering too.
How do you feel that you are inspiring the new generation of physicists? An example of that is Luis Flores, a former student of this institution that is working in the Atlas experiment at the CERN. And he also read you as you read Einstein, and it's like a change. How do you feel about it?
Oh, I feel wonderful, because to me, you know, since I think the world needs more science and technology in the future, that if I can inspire even one person to pursue those areas, I feel very vindicated in what I'm doing, because who knows what that person will create and produce for the benefit of humankind? Who knows? And if you have the opportunity to inspire a number of people, to me, it's so important because the world needs it. Mexico, for example, if I do it here, Mexico needs more scientists and engineers in the future. Its development as an economy will only be enhanced by it. The world needs it because the problems that possibly somebody in Mexico will solve may have worldwide application in helping take care of some of the very challenging problems facing humankind in the future. You never know where great ideas will come from and great development. So I think it's very, very important for scientists to try to inspire young people to pursue science and technology.
How do you balance the science work with the human approach and the philosophy, the ethics, all that kind of things?
Well, I always think to myself, I have to be a good human being first, and then I'm a scientist. And I always, and never lose sight of that, because being a good human being means that you are a constructive part of humanity. And I think we all want to be constructive parts of humanity. And so I think the science has overlaid that. You know, the idea that science comes before ethics, no. Ethics comes before science. Because after all, we do science as human beings to further the benefit of humankind. So since the ethical basis is what keeps us all together as a well-functioning species, that has to come first. It always has to come first.
Well, thank you very much. Our time is over, but it was really enlightening.
Thank you. I appreciate the excellent questions you asked. They were very, very enlightening questions. And thank you so much for